I've just never heard anything like that in my life. I've never heard screams like that. I don't know. It was that.
You prepared for what you heard?
No, not for that.
It was a warm evening, October 31st, 1979, Halloween night in San Fernando Valley, California. The air was buzzing, with that kind of energy that only Halloween can bring. The kids were out laughing their custom sprite against the dimming light, and the scent of crisp autumn leaves mixed with the sweet smell of candy. Shirley Lynette Litford was just 16, and like any other teenager, she was looking forward to a night out. It was Halloween after all. She was hitchhiking, which back then was much more common than it is now, especially for kids her age. It wasn't really seen as quiet as dangerous, I guess, or maybe they just didn't think much of it. She was just trying to get from a friend's place to her home, just a regular everyday kind of thing. She waited for a while, signaled to a few cars to give her a ride. But then, after waiting for about 15 minutes, a van pulled up. It was a dark, custom-made Dodge van, the kind with no side window, and it had a little mural painted on the side, something you would see at a surf spot. Two guys were inside. One of them was older with a kind of scruffy look, and the other seemed a bit younger and less intimidating. At first glance, they offered her a ride. Shirley just hopped in knowing it was going to be a quick ride. But on that particular day, something happened to that girl that shook the whole town to its core. And now, just for the sake of clarity, let's talk about this guy. His name is Lawrence Whitaker. His early life was a constant movement, a disjointed existence shaped by his father's military career. There was no real home, no stable place to settle in, just a series of temporary addresses and new faces all the time. Maybe that made him feel like an outsider, always watching, always a bit separate from everyone else. His childhood was tough. He didn't get much warmth or real care. His mother was often angry and yelled a lot. His father, even when he was there, he was distant. So Lawrence learned to take care of himself. He learned to observe, and most importantly, he learned to control. He really hated being controlled by anyone else, and that feeling stuck with him. Even as a kid, he was sharp, but not in a good way. School bored him. He was not interested in learning rules. Instead, he used his intelligence to figure out people, to find their weak spots, to understand what made them tick and what made them break. He thought that's where the real power was. His teenage years quickly went downhill. He was restless, always looking for a thrill, a feeling of strength. It started with small thefts just to see what he could get away with, and he got away with a lot. The rush, the feeling of breaking rules, or just going where he shouldn't, those were the first hooks. These soon led to bigger crimes like burglaries. It wasn't about the money for him. It was the excitement of breaking in and going where he shouldn't, and the dark satisfaction of making people afraid. This pattern landed him in institutions. The system, it seemed, just couldn't hold him. Each time he got out, he was more angry, smarter, and better at finding the system's weak points. These times in jails weren't just punishment for him, they were grim lessons. He learned tricks from other inmates, making his methods sharper. He learned patience, how to plan carefully, and the dark art of avoiding getting caught. Alone in his cell, his thoughts went beyond simple crimes. His fantasies grew darker, becoming something much more disrupting. He began to plan in detail, to imagine having complete control over someone, making them hurt not for money, but for the sheer pleasure of it. The idea of taking someone totally, completely became a powerful, obsessive thought. He would picture every little detail, the screams, the desperate pleas, the terrible surrender. These dark desires started to take over his entire mind. It was inside a California prison in the late 1970s that Lawrence Whitaker met Roy Louis Norris. Norris was younger, not as smart, a small-time criminal with a history of sexual offenses. By himself, he wasn't particularly scary. But Whitaker saw something useful in Norris, a clear weakness, a desire to please, a mind that could be easily shaped. Norris had his own dark urges, sure, but he didn't have the drive or the brains to act on them. To Whitaker, Norris was a perfect tool, someone who could do what he was told. Their talks in prison were long, hushed conversations about their shared twisted desires. Whitaker, being the stronger one, laid out his plan, his detailed fancies of causing prolonged pain and having total control. Norris, instead of pulling away, leaned in. He listened closely, his own excitement building as he heard Whitaker's awful ideas. It was a chilling bond formed in darkness, a place where their cruel thoughts bounced back and forth. Norris, not clever enough to come up with such schemes, was just desperate enough for Whitaker's approval to willingly go along. He was the ideal partner. He could drive, handle the dirty work, help control the victim, leaving Whitaker free to plan the true horrors. After they got out of prison, their discussions weren't just forgotten dreams. The detailed plans they had made in jail were now put into action. Whitaker immediately found a perfect vehicle for their crimes. He made it his own, iris-trained and soundproofing, turning it into a mobile torture chamber. He also bought everyday items that would soon become tools of unimaginable cruelty. Pliers, hammers, common things found in any toolbox, now to be used for evil. For him, every detail mattered. Roy Norris all this time was around Whitaker, like a moth to a dangerous flame. He was very eager, almost sadly, to prove himself to be part of something big. He never questioned Whitaker's leadership or his terrible ideas. He just did what he was told, his own pathetic desires fueling his obedience. And so on that fateful Halloween night in 1979 in San Fernando Valley, California, everything was set. The air was thick with the happy chaos of kids in costumes, which provided the perfect cover for their plans. As they drove in the customized van, Whitaker the silent master, Norris the willing driver, their eyes scanning the streets, and then they saw her, a young girl walking along the street, hitchhiking. Shirley Lene Litford, a normal teenager just looking for a ride, so innocent, so unaware. Whitaker gave a silent signal to Norris, a simple offer of a ride, a false act of kindness that would forever destroy her life. She just got in without thinking. The van's door closed with a soft thud, the last sound of freedom disappearing. As Norris drove, turning off the main roads towards the isolated spots that Whitaker had picked out, a heavy tension filled the enclosed space. The silence in the back of the van, deep and suffocating, marked the true start of their horrifying game. She was trapped, the Whitaker's control was complete, and for him the terrible possibilities were now endless. She was held in a van, tortured, and ultimately murdered. The details are deeply disrupting, and her suffering was so extreme. Just out of respect for her family, I am not going into detail about what they did to her. But what I can tell you is this: it was so horrific that when the tape which two men had recorded during the crime was played in court, people rushed out of the courtroom, pale, shaken, some even in tears. Because of its horrifying nature, the tape has never been released to the public. Only transcripts exist, and even those are hard to read.